why you want to prune your trees. One is to improve your tree quality. And if you prune them, it's going to send the energy to the tree to help it grow better. And it's going to get rid of unwanted branches that are growing. It's going to open up your light channels, open up wind channels, and it's going to make the tree overall more healthier. So it will improve light penetration. It's going to increase air movement through the tree, so minimizing diseases. And it can, if you prune it properly, you'll increase the strength of your branches. There's other reasons you want to prune also. One is the cosmetics of the tree. To make a tree look like a tree, a lot of people will prune it to make it look and shape it like a tree is supposed to look. So you want to prune the tree to keep it in balance. Pruning provides access to the fruit, so you can get to the fruit. If you're pruning the tree properly, it's going to open up the light channels and the wind channels, and it's going to reduce insect and disease damage. And pruning will also improve the tree's health by allowing that light to get in there and allowing that air circulation to get in there to keep the tree dry. Here's the topics we're going to cover. We're going to cover basic knowledge. We're going to cover when to prune. We're going to cover what to prune, what kind of equipment to use, and your objective, and the different types of cuts. So this picture here is just a basic picture of a branch. If you look up on top, you can see a terminal bud up there. The next line down is leaf buds. So there's going to be leaf buds forming. And then if you look down on the third line down there, it's last year's growth ring. And then the final line is fruiting bud on a spur. So those are some of the things you should recognize on all branches if you're looking at a branch. Here's something kind of interesting that really helps out. Your limb angle regulates growth. So vertically positioned shoots encourage strong vegetative growth, but produce fewer fruit buds. However, your horizontally positioned shoots do a weaker growth at the tip, but produce more fruit buds. So that's kind of interesting to remember. Tree pruning. When do you want to prune a tree? The best time to prune trees is dormant. There's also summer pruning, and there's also exceptions to every rule. So we're going to cover all three of these.
Yep.
So dormant pruning is done during the dormant season, and it tends to have an invigorating effect on the tree growth. So when you're pruning, all the sap and all the energy is down in the rooting system during the dormant season. So once you prune, and once that tree becomes active again, it's going to start sending all of its auxins up the tree branches and to the places that you have pruned. Summer pruning. This is what we're here talking about, is pruning done during the peak growth seasons. So when you do it in the summer, you're going to slow the growth of the tree down by removing leaves that manufacture nourishment. However, too much summer pruning can damage a tree, so you have to be careful when you're pruning it. A lot of people will prune in the summertime to control the height of a tree and to control the shape of the tree. Make sure it's basically looks like a tree. So these are two of the basic times you want to prune trees, is dormant and summer. If you do pruning during the post or pre-dormancy periods, you're likely to cause damage to the tree and you could cause disease to the tree. So you have to be very careful there. Pruning during the spring and fall is generally the least desirable time, as the plant is most vulnerable during these times. And just for your knowledge, the most type of trees that require pruning yearly are fruit trees. They're the ones that give the most vigorous growth. This is going to cover the 4 seasons of pruning. The one we're caring about right now is the summer pruning. So your summer pruning is done between June and August, and it directs the growth by slowing the branches you don't want, or if you want to dwarf the tree. So a lot of people dwarf the tree so they don't have to use step ladders to get the fruit or to maintain the tree itself. But once again, you do have to be careful when you're doing summer pruning. You could end up stimulating the growth of the tree, which was what a lot of people want to do. But if you prune it too late, the cut has a good chance of not hardening off before the cold weather starts getting here, and you could cause damage to the tree. So if you're going to do summer pruning, make sure you do it early. I would recommend in the June time frame. So this handout, this 4 seasons of pruning, I put this on a handout, and Gary has that to pass out to people, plus the PowerPoint will be shared. And if you look down at the very bottom of this slide, there's a page there that will connect you right to this site. Okay, I mentioned there's exceptions to the rules. Okay, you have Asian pears and cherries that you have to prune in the summertime no matter what because of disease. If you prune these in the wintertime when it's a wet season, you open up the tree to cuts and you end up can cause damage to the tree. The big question is, how do you see what to prune out while the tree is leafed out? So if your tree is fully leafed, how are you going to know where to cut the branches at? Any ideas on that?
No.
All right, the best way to do it is in the wintertime when the tree does not have any leaves, take a look at your tree and just tie a ribbon around the branch you want to prune in the summer. That's the easiest way to mark your branches instead of waiting until summertime when the tree is fully leafed out. So just mark it in the wintertime. And then when the summer gets here, you take the branches that have the ribbons or the tape on or whatever you did to mark. That's the easiest way to mark your branches. Okay, fruit tree pruning. The easiest way to remember the different types of pruning is the 4 Ds. If the branch is damaged, you want to remove it. So a broken branch is shown on number 2. So if you fall down, look at number 2, you can see the branch is broken. It's kind of hard to show a dead branch, so that's not shown in the picture, or a diseased branch. But dead is one of them, diseased is another. And the 4th D is dysfunctional. Dysfunctional can be a sucker, which is number 1 coming off the root sucker right there. A water sprout, which is number 3. That's coming off right next to the main trunk of the tree. Interfering branches. If you see interfering branches or crossing branches, take those branches out so they don't mar the tree or damage the tree.
That's a sucker.
Any branch going upward or any branch going downward, you can remove. And as number 5 up there, you see there has a double leader. Get rid of the double leader, only have a single leader up there. So take the one double leader off. So that's kind of easy on the easiest way to remember what branches to take out of a tree. And if you start removing those branches, chances are you'll be down to your 33%. It's only recommended to remove 33% of a tree at one time in a year's time. Don't go more than that. Different types of equipment used. Up top, you see a pair of pruners. Off to the left on the bottom, you see loppers. There's chainsaws, bow saws, pole saws. And I recommend using a fruit tree, an orchard ladder. That's the one that has like a tripod. And if you look down at the very base, it has flat spots on the feet where you're climbing up the ladder. So when they sink into the ground, there's a permanent, gives you more surface area so the ladder doesn't sink. And it's also recommended not to go over 10 foot. If you do higher than 10 feet in the air, you want to make sure you call somebody else to take care of it. That's just a recommendation so somebody doesn't get hurt or fall. More equipment, you're going to use sharpening tools. You have to keep your pruners sharpened. You can use files. You can use sharpening stones. There's sharpening tools. Emery paper for the finishing smoothness. Just be careful you don't cut your fingers. Safety equipment to wear. You're going to be wearing gloves, safety glasses. If you're going to be using power equipment, make sure you have hearing protection on. After your cuts, you want to make sure you disinfect your loppers, whatever equipment you're using. You can spray alcohol on it. You can use a Lysol, Pine Sol. 10% bleach solution can be corrosive. You got to be careful using it. So if you do use a 10% bleach solution, make sure you lubricate your tool after you put that on. Lubrication, you're going to use a chainsaw bar oil and lubricating oil. WD-40 works fine for lubricating your pruners after you've sharpened them. Or a thin coat of machine oil. Any type of oil that will coat the blades. Okay, one quick question here. Which type of pruners are better, Anvil or bypass style pruners? There's 2 types of pruners out there. You want to make sure you buy the right type of pruners. So if you see an Anvil pruner, which is on your left, I'd stay clear of those. Make sure you use a bypass pruner, and here's the reason why. Usually an Anvil pruner will end up smashing your branch.
Art, you might explain, for those that don't know what you mean by Anvil pruner, what that means.
Okay. An Anvil pruner is, well, a bypass pruner. Let me explain what a bypass pruner is. That's a little easier. It's like a pair of scissors. The blades will bypass each other and make a cleaner cut. An Anvil pruner, at the bottom blade, there's an anvil down there, and you put the branch on the anvil and the blade comes down and cuts right to the anvil and ends up smashing your branch. So that's the difference between the Anvil and the bypass pruners. If you use Anvil pruners, it usually ends up crushing or tearing the the branch and it will not seal well, leaving a plant open to disease. For this reason, bypass pruners style are recommended. Any questions on those two pruners? Okay, your objective. We said earlier the objective. So whatever you want your tree to look like, that's the way you want to prune. So you have a central leader, a modified central leader. You have the open center vase. You have espalier, and you have the palmette espalier. Those are basically your tree objectives that you want to steer to while you're pruning your tree. So when you're doing your corrective pruning for your central leader, the correct way to do it is as the diagram shows up on top here. You want it to form, you want to have strong lateral branches coming out, and you don't want them too high. So you can see between the top row and the bottom row, the difference that's going to happen as this tree ages. Okay, a lot of people buy whips. So when you buy a whip, you want to plant the whip. You want to check out the buds. A whip is just a stick, basically. It looks just like a stick. It's a tree that has a rooting ball at the bottom, and you're going to plant this stick in the ground. And you want to make sure it's above your rootstock. As you can see down at the very, very bottom where it's been grafted, you want to watch your graft. And that's right below the bud number 1. It's like a diagonal looking graft down there. You want to make sure that graft stays above the ground. Then you're going to count up. You got your first bud, your second bud, and your third bud. And it says here you want to put a nick in there. So that's going to, if you put a nick in below that third bud, that's going to encourage the hormones and the auxins to go to that third bud and make it stronger. And then up at the very top, you're going to do a cutoff. So that is going to, you cut that tree off approximately somewhere between the 30 to 36 inch above the ground. And you want to make sure you do an angled cut on that. And also do the cut away from the bud if you're close to that third bud. Now this is when you're planting your trees this is basically in the springtime when you're putting your new trees in. Yeah. That's the best way to keep your tree in balance. So you want to make sure your tree stays in balance. You want to have equal amount of branches on each side so the tree stays balanced all the way up. And we'll show some pictures where some people have really done some bad damages to the trees. But you want to make sure that that tree stays balanced, that you get equal size on both sides of the tree, or all sides of the tree, basically. So it makes a nice full tree for you. That answer the question?
I have a question about the whip.
Sure, go ahead.
If you cut off the top of it, where does the leader come from then?
The leader's going to come from that third bud.
Okay. Okay. Is that's why you put the nick in it then?
Yes.
So you would not put the nick on buds 2 or 1, just on
Correct.
the one at the top.
Just the one at the top.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, now we're going to get into the different types of pruning cuts you're going to do. There's 2 basic cuts. If you don't get anything else out of this lesson, just remember these cuts. One is a thinning cut, And if you look at the top picture, there's dotted lines on that tree to the first picture on the right, on the left-hand side. There's dotted lines. And what you want to do is you want to take that branch all the way back to its origin. So that's what they call a thinning cut. So if you look where the dotted lines are and then you go over to the next picture right next to it, you'll see what that looks like after you've done the cut.
Has anyone else lost the picture?
No.
Okay, I might have to bounce out and come back in.
Okay. All right, so thinning cut, you take the whole branch out or shoot back to its origin. And what this does, it opens up light channels, and this will also increase your fruit production and quality of your fruit. Okay, now if you go down to the next line is a heading cut. And once again, you'll see the dotted lines are going to show you how you do a heading cut and then the results of a heading cut. So a heading cut cuts off part of the branch or the shoot. So you're not going to follow it back to the origin. You're just going to cut it somewhere in the length of that branch, wherever you feel you need to make a cut at. A lot of people do heading cuts to get it out of the way. Like if you're cutting grass underneath a tree, they'll do a heading cut on a branch. Or if they want to strengthen a branch up, they'll do a heading cut. So heading cuts tend to close off light channels, because what you're going to end up doing, you can see after that one cut, you end up with 3 more branches coming out, or 4 or 5. It could be a bunch more coming out of there. So you're going to get more leaf production, and it's going to block off more light. And it's also going to decrease your fruit production. So you don't want to do as much heading cuts as you do. Thinning cuts are the better cuts to make, if you can do them. Here's the results of thinning cuts, and there's the results of heading cuts. A quick diagram on both of those and how you do each of the cuts. If you look at the thinning cut, it's taking it all the way back to the origin on both of them. So you're taking off the top branch and you're taking off the main branch. Either way, you're taking off that branch all the way back to the color of the tree. And the reason you want to go back to that color of the tree so that it scabs over and it forms its own healing wounds so you don't get diseases into there. Okay, why would you want to do a heading cut? Here's an example of doing a heading cut, and there's what it's going to look like after the heading cuts. So you're basically making a tree look like a bush. Okay, so it's going to stiffen or shorten a branch. It's going to definitely increase branching. And a lot of people do heading cuts to control the height of a tree. Here's a picture of somebody that's done too much heading cuts. And when you look at these trees, in the wintertime, they look terrible. And why, and usually the people, the county, when they come through, that's the way they're going to do your trees. If you don't take care of your trees and they're on the road and they're getting in the way, they're going to just hack them right up there to clear their areas. And that's what they did on these trees here. And this is usually the results of what you do when you do too many heading cuts. It's going to look like a chia pet. Techniques, you want to do flush cuts, make no stubs. If you make stubs, you're going to end up with suckers. You want to be careful not to cut into the collar, so you just want to go even with the collar. You want to do large angle cuts and no dressings. Do not put any dressings after the cut because you could seal in a disease. If the branch is too big, you want to make your first cut, just notch it right underneath the branch, and then take a second cut all the way down. And what that does is it lightens the load, so when you make your close cut to the collar, it doesn't just rip the trunk away from the tree and cause more damage. It makes it a lighter drop for you. So that's recommended when you're going into large diameter type branches. So in summary, what we covered, we did basic knowledge, why you prune, different vertical and horizontal shoots, what are the best seasons to prune, the ARDs, the damage, dead, the disease, dysfunctional, the different types of equipment to use, the objective, and that's usually your shape, and the different types of cuts, which are the most important, the thinning and the heading cuts.